Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're watching or listening. My name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. For today's lecture, ladies and gentlemen, we'll provide another installment in our series on the Discourses Concerning Government, written by Mr. Algernon Sidney. Today we're going on to Chapter 1, Section 10, so if you haven't gone back and watched the previous sections, I highly encourage you to do so, because understanding Mr. Sidney's work is going to be very beneficial to you when going about understanding the rest of Western jurisprudence. How do we know that? Because we see very frequently the founders actually alluding directly to Mr. Sidney's works, not just Discourses Concerning Government. One primary example is that in the reading list suggested by Mr. Thomas Jefferson to his nephew or an acquaintance he knew, who was asking for, how do I prepare for the legal field? How do I prepare for the legal world? Thomas Jefferson recommended directly by name Mr. Algernon Sidney's work, Discourses Concerning Government. So understanding this work, Mr. Sidney's works in general, is going to greatly benefit you in understanding or going about understanding the principles which the founding generation relied upon when writing our current governing documents. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the Discourses Concerning Government. Like I said, we're going on to section 11, and this one's a fairly short section, so instead of extracting the most important points, we're just going to read through the entirety of it. Of course, as always, I encourage you to go read this for yourselves, just so there is no concern about me in any way misrepresenting what Mr. Sidney is saying here. So section 11, aptly summarized in the header, is titled, "No man comes to command many, unless by consent or by force. But because I cannot believe God hath created man in such a state of misery and slavery as I just now mentioned, by discovering the vanity of our author's whimsical patriarchal kingdom, I am led to a certain conclusion that every father of a family is free and exempt from the domination of any other, as the 72 that went from Babel were. Babel, not Babel. Babel were. 'Tis hard to comprehend how one man can come to be master of many, equal to himself in right, unless it be only by consent or by force. If by consent, we are at an end of our controversies. Governments and the magistrates that execute them are created by man. They who give a being to them cannot but have a right of regulating, limiting, and directing them as best pleaseth themselves, and all our author's assertions concerning the absolute power of one man fall to the ground. If by force, we are to examine how it can be possible or justifiable. This subduing by force we call conquest. But as he that forceth must be stronger than those that are forced, to talk of one man who in strength exceeds many millions of men is to go beyond the extravagance of fables and romances. This wound is not cured by saying that he first conquers one, and then more, and with their help others. For as to matter of fact, the first news we hear of Nimrod is that he reigned over a great multitude and built vast cities. And we know of no kingdom in the world that did not begin with a greater number than any one man could possibly subdue. If they choose one to be their head, did under his conduct subdue others, they were fellow conquerors with him. And nothing can be more brutish than to think that by their virtue and valor they had purchased perpetual slavery to themselves and their posterity. But if it were possible, it could not be justifiable. And whilst our dispute is concerning right, that which ought not to be is no more to be received than if it could not be. No right can come by conquest, unless there were a right of making that conquest, which, by reason of the equality of our author, confesses to have been amongst the heads of families. And as I have proved, no man can justly impose anything upon those who owe him nothing. Our author, therefore, who, quote, ascribes the enlargement of Nimrod's kingdom to usurpation and tyranny, might as well have acknowledged the fame in the beginning, as he says all other authors have done. However, he ought not to have imputed to Sir Walter Raleigh an approbation of his right, as lord or king over his family. For he could never think him to be a lord by the right of a father, who by that rule must have lived and died a slave to his fathers that overlived him. Whosoever therefore like Nimrod grounds his pretensions of right upon usurpation and tyranny, declares himself to be, like Nimrod, a usurper and a tyrant. That is an enemy to God and man, and to have no right at all. That which was unjust in its beginning can of itself never change its nature. Quote, Tempus infi, faith grocius, nullum habet vim, effectrisum, He that persists in doing injustice aggravates it, and takes upon himself all the guilt of his predecessors. But if there be a king in the world that claims a right by conquest and would justify it, he might do well to tell whom he conquered, when, with what assistance, and upon what reason he undertook the war. For he can ground no title upon the obscurity of an unsearchable antiquity. And if he does it not, he ought to be looked upon as a usurping Nimrod. Excellent. So that is all to be said. Section 11. If you have any questions about what was said in section 11, questions about what was said in the preceding sections, or maybe there's a legal topic you'd like me to cover in a future lecture, go ahead and post those down in the comments, because the entire purpose of the Calhoun School of Law is to equip you with the necessary skills and information to combat any sort of lawfare that will be waged against you, your loved ones, or your hard-earned property. So please, if you have any questions at all, go ahead and post them down in the comments. Excellent. So my name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and if not, while you're down in the comments, go ahead and let me know how I can do better so I can best serve that purpose of helping you. I hope you'll have a wonderful day, and until I see y'all in the next lecture for the next topic, I bid you all farewell.